So she starts off with the audio note. There are sound issues throughout the footage. The volume was originally set to 100% and was so loud and distorted that most of the early dialogue was incomprehensible. So the way that they viewed this, from my understanding, is that they had to lease a jury room. And so they would wheel out, like, if you remember in school, they had those rolling things with like a giant monitor on them and like a KVM to manage it. It was like that. And it was apparently like the worst, like, Hicktown setup possible. And the woman supervised her for the first 20 minutes. And then after she left, she had access to the computer. So she adjusted the audio so that it was listenable and could rewind. So this is going to be the most complete notes that we're going to get. Even after turning it down to 8%, there are still problems inhering due to background noise, a barking dog, overlapping voices, radio chatter, and Pomplin's movement. Some of the dialogue is paraphrased to the best of my ability. Camera note, this video is from Officer Pomplin's body camera. He moves around a lot and rarely stays in one place for long, so the footage can be jumpy and hard to follow. That, combined with the noise and clutter, adds to the chaos. So I believe that the belief was that Pomplin was the guy in charge, and he seems to be all over the place, like talking to the forensic squad, talking to the officer managing the family, talking to Rekieta himself. So he seems to be the top dog in the sheriff's department. So let's start. They enter at 9:15 to 9:33, or enter at 9:15. The video begins with the officers ramming the front door. Very, very cinematic, very Kino. As they enter, the first thing you see is a scared child. The house is extremely filthy. The floors are covered in clothes and junk. In some areas, there is no walkway at all. You actually have to walk on stuff to move through the space. Countertops are stacked with random items, and liquor bottles are everywhere. The filth and hoarding are immediate and overwhelming. The mess you see in Nick's kitchen, where he shows it on stream, is nothing compared to the rest of the house. There is one space clearly staged. It's obvious he only cleans the visible area specifically for streaming. Kayla and April are brought out of the house and led outside. A dog can be heard barking in the background. I don't know if it's in this notes, but apparently that dog is locked into the master bedroom's bathroom for some reason. Officers call a child who is downstairs. The kids are being removed from the house while the search begins. One of the officers goes downstairs to remove the youngest child. She comes up holding the officer's hand. She speaks to him, but the audio was unclear due to the background noise. As they head to the door, she pauses to pick up the cat so she can take it outside with her. The search continues. A nitrous tank is visible in the house. Nick can be heard outside yelling, "Get out of my house." He says something about probable cause and a search warrant. He sounds indignant. Officer Pomplin walks out of his squad car to get gloves. As he returns, the camera catches all the kids sitting on the ground outside with Kayla. They are huddled against the house. The scene is heartbreaking. Kayla is taken back inside and searched. Officer Pomplin enters a bedroom, and this is what I mean. All three of the adults are sequestered off to different areas and interviewed separately. So if ideally we would have 3 body cam footages, one the officer talking to Kayla, one of the officer talking to April, and one of Officer Pomplin, so that we could see what they told the officers. But we have Robbie and Pomplin, which is April and Rekieta, respectively. Officer Pomplin enters a bedroom where other officers are photographing drugs and paraphernalia found on top of a red mini fridge. The cuck fridge is in the footage. The fridge is being used as a nightstand. So the other footage, which other notes that I'll read, talk about this, but apparently the room that is inside the Rekieta house, the master bedroom, where Rekieta, April, and Kayla were sleeping, is a straight shot from the front door. So you walk through the front door and you're in the main living space, and then there's the master bedroom right there. And my understanding is that from the other perspective, which I'll get into, that you can actually see a bullet with cocaine in it from the front door, because it's like a straight shot from the entrance of the house into their bedroom. The cuck fridge sits right there, and on top of it was the cocaine. But they begin photographing evidence inside Nick's streaming room. The room is far smaller than expected, and the condition is much worse than anything seen on stream. There are bottles of alcohol everywhere. The entire space is buried under hoarded junk, electronics, collectibles, and random gear. His 5-monitor setup and other equipment are visible, but everything around it is chaotic. The curated background people see during streams is a total facade. They go through a bag full of brown glass bottles, each one wrapped in tissues. I believe that these bottles that were on his desk contain an unknown brown viscous substance that they never identified. But I think Nick now claims that it was DMT. So like on his streaming setup is DMT. This was consistent from both notes, that there is basically, if you just imagine like a box that contains everything that the webcam is showing on stream, that box is immaculately kept for his streams, but everything else in that room is a garbage heap. Both notes mention this explicitly. And I should mention that this woman and Tiki Man did not communicate at all. They had never spoken to each other at all. They didn't have one didn't have a forum account, so they didn't meet up. The first woman did not go to the omnibus hearing. They had never met each other until I don't think they even talked to each other until the day before, because they were all going to go see the hearing together. And I put them in contact literally like 10 p.m. last night. An officer enters and informs them that cocaine was found in the bedroom where Kayla and April had come out earlier. Some of the officers meet up in the entryway and brief each other on the situation. One mentions that Nick is trying to ask them questions instead of answering theirs. Another officer says he needs to get statements, figure out who lives in the house, and call family services. The audio was unclear due to the background noise, so the dialogue here is paraphrased to the best of my ability. Officer Pomplin goes back into the master bedroom, where officers are still going through the red fridge being used as a nightstand. He then heads outside to talk to Nick for the first time, at least from what's visible at this camera angle. Pomplin tells Nick, "We want to ask you some questions, a quick interview. We want to get an idea of the layout of the house, where the nanny is at, and who all stays here." Nick immediately pushes back and asks, "What is your probable cause?" Pomplin replies, "You have the search warrant." So unfortunately, we did not get the nice perspective of the officer handing Nick Rekieta the search warrant, which he then huffs at and throws on the ground. Because he was talking about what he experienced, and he was stopped at a stop sign by a different officer and given the warrant. So him complaining about probable cause to the police officer is very silly, because they have a warrant. He knows they have a warrant. He doesn't need probable cause. He has a warrant at this point, okay? So he's not searching on probable cause alone. He's searching because he has a warrant issued by a judge to search the house. Nick stands there with his arms crossed. He's calm but looks like shit. He says, "Cool, you have no probable cause." Pomplin asks, "Are you willing to talk with me?" Nick responds, "Sure," then immediately adds, "You have no probable cause." Nick is a lawyer who has repeatedly said on stream, by the way, that he never talked to cops, and here he is talking to cops, and this actually will bite him in the ass when we get a little bit down. Pomplin says, "I'm not discussing that. You have been given the search warrant. You know how this works." Nick again says something about probable cause. Nick has read his Miranda rights. They begin questioning him about the children and the other adults in the home. Pomplin confirms Kayla is his wife and then asks about the other woman. Nick gives April names and says she's a friend. He says she does not reside there. Very important. This is probably one of the most important things in the entire notes, because it not only is important to Nick's criminal case, but it's also important to why this is evidence to begin with. Pomplin tells him she came out of the bedroom. Nick replies, "Okay, so she came out of the bedroom." Pomplin says, "When I have people over, they don't go in my bedroom." Nick snaps, "I don't give a shit what you do." Pomplin stays calm and says, "I'm just asking questions." Nick tells him, "No, you're not. You're making statements." Pomplin asks, "Where do you stay in the residence?" Nick says, "All over. It's my home." Pomplin asks, "Do you stay in the master bedroom?" Nick says, "When I'm there, I stay in there, sure." Pomplin asks, "Is that where you sleep at night?" Nick says, "Yes." Pomplin responds, "That's all I needed to know." That is a typical conversation with Nick Rekieta. If in case you're wondering, that is exactly how he is all the time. He's a shape-shifting rat. He's like slime between your fingers. That's every that's not just him talking to police. That's what his wife asking him what he wants at McDonald's is like. "You know what I want at McDonald's?" "Oh, well, what do you mean? What do you want at McDonald's?" Like, "Well, do you want the burger? Do you want this?" Like, "I've already been through this. You know what I want." And it's like, come on, bro, just answer the question. He then asks, do you want to tell me where things are in the house to help expedite the search?" Nick says, "Where what things are?" Pomplin says, "You saw the warrant. We're looking for controlled substances." Nick says, "I'm not admitting to anything. That's ridiculous. You still have no probable cause." Pomplin says, "We're going to be searching the house. We're going to be contacting family services." Nick asks, "Why?" Pomplin says, "Because we've already found cocaine in the house." Nick just stares at him. As I mentioned, they literally walk through the door, and in the master bedroom, which is a straight shot from the entrance area, there is the cuck fridge with the cocaine. So they're coming into the house looking for cocaine. Lo and behold, right on the fridge, in plain view of everyone, including anybody else residing in that house. I think he thought that his cocaine safe was going to protect him. Pomplin adds, "We're not here on a whim." Pomplin says, "Yes, you are." Nick says, "Yes, you are." Pomplin says, "No, we're not." Nick repeats, "Yes." A very productive conversation. Nick tells him, "We came here looking for controlled substances. We were only in the house about 10 minutes and we already found some." Nick responds, "I don't know anything about it." Nick says something about family services and mentions the grandparents. Pomplin tells him that's most likely what will happen, but family services has to be involved. We'll put them with a family member if we can. Nick and April are both handcuffed in the driveway facing each other. It's almost cinematic. Sweaty, the word that we use in my industry is kino. April is looking at him with a pouty face and puppy dog eyes. She's wearing black cutoff shorts and a black long sleeve crop top. As Nick is being walked into the squad car, he tells the officer, "I hope you catch." Before putting him in the vehicle, they stop to photograph the sores on his arms. He has a lot of them. Nick asks, "Are you going to arrest my wife too?" Pomplin tells him yes, but we're going to have her stay with the kids until family services and the grandparents get here. Nick is visibly seething. Pomplin says, "I'll come and talk to you when we're done and at the jail." The audio was unclear due to the background noise, so I couldn't hear Nick's response. Pomplin then walks away from Nick and over to April. He introduces himself, explains what's going to happen, and tells her that she's going to jail, and asks if she has any questions and whether she's been Mirandized. April says no, but I want to ask. Pomplin interrupts to confirm that she has been read her Miranda rights. She has. He has been asking her questions. Now, this is the point of contention. I will circle back to this. He begins asking her questions. Pomplin, how long have you been here? April says, not that long, maybe a month. I'm trying to find my own place. Pomplin says, "So you've been living here?" April says, "Yep." So this is immediately Nick lying to the police, who said, no, she does not live here. He talks to her, and the very first words out of her mouth are, "I live here." Yup. So that's his issue. Because I imagine what he was hoping to do is put the blame on her and just say, like, that was all her drugs. I don't know this crazy lady. Unfortunately, she immediately confirmed to them upon being asked questions that she had been living there for a month. Pomplin says, "You came out of the bedroom with Kayla, right?" April says, "Yes." Pomplin says, "Were you hanging out in there?" April says, "Yes." Pomplin says, "What were you doing in there?" April says, "Kayla was sleeping and I was changing clothes." Pomplin tells her they're executing a narcotics search warrant. April shakes her head no, as if she's confused, in disbelief, or pretending not to understand. Another officer asks, "You were changing clothes in there?" April says, "Yes." He follows up, "You keep stuff in there?" April says, "Yes." What kind of stuff could she keep? That's important to determining who owns what in a house. At that point, another officer walks up holding 2 pairs of shoes. He puts one pair down on the ground, and April looks at them and says, "Those are not mine." The officer apologizes and says, "Sorry, there's a lot." There's a lot of shit in that house. I'll try to find you some other shoes. April looks at the other pair still in his hand and says, "Those are mine." He places them on the ground. They're slip-on sandals with straps. April tries to put them on while handcuffed as they continue to ask her questions. They ask where she sleeps when she's staying at the house. April says, "Sometimes I sleep in the sunroom. There's a couch in there. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, so I sleep next to Kayla on the bed." She interrupts to ask for help putting on her sandals. The officer bends down and helps get them on her feet. By the way, Kayla is the only person who didn't talk to the police, which is, I imagine, why there's no body cam footage of a cop talking to her, because there was no, she was the only person competent enough under the pressure to shut her mouth. One of the officers says something about controlled substance search warrants and that, "I'll let you think about that." April shakes her head no again, clearly overwhelmed or confused. They tell her that she's being charged with 5th-degree felony controlled substance offense. April reacts, "Oh my God." The officer says, "We'll go from there. Any questions for me?" April responds, "No, I wouldn't know what to ask. Like I said, this is," she pauses, "scary." He tells her, "We'll meet up later and try to make it more clear for you," then places her in the squad car. At 9:47, Kayla refuses to speak. Oh, sorry, this is the subtitle area. This is 30 minutes into the footage. A female cop holding a big gun. So apparently, Rekieta's testimony that they did show up with weapons drawn is accurate, but he said that they didn't point it at anybody, so they did have cops with rifles ready to go in case there was like some narcotics coming in. The cop with the big gun is mentioned a couple times. A female cop holding a big gun says Kayla refuses to speak without her attorney present. Kayla and the kids are sitting on the ground against the house behind the cop. Kayla is sitting with her head on her oldest daughter's shoulders. It is a heartbreaking scene. As Officer Pomplin is walking away, I hear the female cop say, "I'm going to try and get her some clothes." It's unclear who she's referring to. As Officer Pomplin walks through the disgusting house, you can hear him let out a huge sigh as he looks at everything. He puts on some gloves. He gets into the bedroom and asks, "Are we still going through things in here?" She says that there's a hard time understanding the response because the dog in the bathroom is still barking very loudly. The officer goes back to his car to get something. He drinks some Mountain Dew. Hell yeah! This is this is a country boy up here. He drinks some Mountain Dew and gets some snuff. Oh man, this guy is proper country. This is a good old boy right here. On his way back in, he passes Kayla and the kids again. He has interactions with another cop that I don't quite understand. Somebody says something about the house being huge. He heads back to his car, again looking for something, couldn't see what it was. On his way back in, one of the other cops is talking to the kids, obviously trying to make them comfortable. After he gets inside, again the audio is hard to understand between background noises, radio chatter, and the dog barking. You hear a conversation about drugs, firearms, and finding the 22 shell casings. Officer Pomplin starts writing down a list of evidence found. The evidence is, because I guess he's writing this in front of his body cam. Number 1, snort tube found on the nightstand fridge tested positive for cocaine. There are 4 cops searching the room. Officer Pomplin heads back to the squad car to retrieve evidence bags. Kayla is not sitting with the kids this time when he passes. Officer Pomplin starts logging evidence again. A glass vial that tested positive for cocaine on the nightstand. 2 credit cards with April's name on them. All of this evidence is from the top of the Kuksh fridge or nightstand, which is covered in a bunch of miscellaneous junk like a Celsius can, a couple candles, a spray bottle of something, maybe lube, and an unframed picture of Nick and Kayla laying on top of other junk. One of the officers picks up a bottle of pills and says, this is paraphrased from memory, I wasn't able to hear what he said verbatim, something like, I found one of the kids' prescriptions right next to the cocaine. It has the name Celeste on it. And as she mentions here, the cops are mistaken. Celeste is Nick's mom. Is she giving him drugs or did he steal it from them? So Celeste is Nick's mom, and they're confused because they assume that one of the kids is named Celeste and their prescription is found in his room. But no, his mother's medication is found on a nightstand next to his bed, where the drug paraphernalia is. So it appears to be that either Celeste is giving him drugs or he is stealing prescription medication from his own parents and snorting them with his mistress in the house. They look at the 2 casino player cards with Nick and Kayla's names on them and take pictures of them. He turns to the other cops to see what they have found. A cop pulls a paper bag out of the armoire and starts taking the stuff out of it. It sounds like he said something about a meth pipe, and then other cops ask if they're used. He says this one looks dirty unless it's brown glass. You can hear a cop say something about the spent 22 shell casings on the floor. One of the other cops finds pipes and bongs. They think they're unused. The dog is still in the washroom barking. Pomplin finally says, we've got to do something about that dog. Officer Pomplin documents in his report the big gun that was found under the bed. Pomplin continues processing and logging the evidence. He is still in the bedroom where the red fringe and nightstand is located. There is movement and chatter as the officers go through the items. It's a mix of searching, bagging, and documenting. The audio is difficult to make out, clearly because of the overlapping voices, barking, and background noise. One of the officers says they found edibles. Another holds up what looks like a grinder and says it contains a white powder. They said they're going to test it. You can hear, so this is 45 minutes in. You can hear a child back in the house. Pomplin is documenting more evidence, a metal container and 2 glass ones with powder. A female comes in asking about taking something to the jail for Kayla. One of the officers finds something under the bed. Officer Pomplin asks, what's that? It sounds like the officer says something about the Supreme Court license. I couldn't make out that word. I'm not sure what that could be, because I don't think Rekieta is admitted to the Supreme Court bar unless it's the Minnesota Supreme Court bar. He asked about the other cops. Did you see Nick's arms? Track marks all down. He says be cognizant of the possibility of finding needles, then says they could be sores. They mentioned Nick passed... Oh, they passed Nick in the car, so the squad car passed Nick on the way to the house. Another cop comes in and says they're interviewing the mom right now. Pomplin says, we're going to be a while. They discuss areas they want to search through thoroughly. The master bedroom, 2 studios, the inner and outer vault studio area. He calls the studio Nick's lair. I will jump ahead to the other, because this is my favorite part of the entire thing, by the way. At 10:06, the officer decides to split up the team. This is the other notes. He's leaving the bedroom to the other areas because he wants to go down to test Nick's studio. One of the other officers calls it his little lair. So chat, here is my request. Only refer to Nick's studio as the little lair now, because that is one of the funniest things from the entire thing. They discuss what cops will be doing and what to search. Officer Pomplin says we need to do our due diligence for the kids, doing all we can. Oh, chat, somebody cared. Somebody in the county cared. They are waiting for the kids and the dog to be picked up. They are splitting the cops up, 3 upstairs and the others downstairs. They discuss April's purse, ID, etc. They left it because there was cash in it. Officer Pomplin leaves 3 cops searching the bedroom, and he starts walking towards the front door. He says something about a lot of stuff being in the studio. You can see You can see Kayla with what appears to be 2 family service workers at the front door. Officer Pomplin goes downstairs. It looks like a family room with a fireplace, some arcade games, a drum set, and other kid stuff. The section is outside the area that leads to Nick's studio. As he goes into the little lair, he passes through a small library-type room with lots of books and random things on the bookshelves. It appears that Nick's studio is like through a little like cubby area. So there's like a small study, and then it leads to his lair. So it's a very strange setup. I'm not sure if that's like an extension or what, but I'm trying to picture that in my head, and it seems like it's like how you would hide a room in like a big mansion. So it goes into the streaming room. Someone mentions vials and something about homemade whiskey. Officer Pomplin opens a Ziploc bag and pulls out a small box that looks like it has a picture of food on it. It looks like something you'd see out of the frozen food section. He then pulls out different vials. One of them has brown substance in it and says that one of them has brine written on it. I think that the consensus is, and it's more audible in the other footage, is that the unknown dark substance that's like scattered throughout his room that they thought might be DMT or something. I think that what they decide is, what one of the other officers says is that it might be a whiskey moonshine kit or something. He says the one looks like it has a whole pepper in it, and the comments says that's weird. He pulls out a bag of seeds. Again, they say something about the possibility of being homemade whiskey or something. Yeah. Officer Pomplin starts going through a small pile of papers. He looks at a handwritten letter. I took notes on it because it was weird and confusing. It was about a father and a daughter and said things like, a dad admits selfishness in crisis, a dad getting all the shit but no praise, and the daughter practice her song just for her dad. This appears, from my understanding, this sounds like poetry. Like Nick got really up on something and started doing poetry about how he wasn't appreciated enough. It's truly bizarre. After Googling, I found out that it's about a South Korean horror film called Train to Busan. So I don't know what is what's going on in the house where he's like doing poetry about Train to Busan. The next piece of paper is from the county, the Department of Environmental Services, something about building a shed. So he's still trying to get that cuck shed built. The next thing is a signed anime picture that looks exactly like this. Oh, she attached a picture, and it was just some like still from an anime. The next is an autograph picture of Eric Rowland. It's signed, "Here's looking at you, Nikki." It has lipstick print on it like this, and says, "P.S. Look here," with an arrow pointing to the button area of his shirt. Next is a piece of unopened certified mail to Kayla with writing on the envelope. He then finds a cardboard box with question marks drawn on it in marker. He opens it, and inside there's a ton of shredded paper. He rummages through it and finds something that he thinks might have been a big mushroom. He then asks the other cop, and the cop says no. Officer Pomplin smells it and puts it back. So they found a mysterious mushroom or something, and the cop is like, "Mushroom?" And he's like, no mushroom. Then he smells it anyways for good measure and puts it back. I hope it was nothing nefarious. Another cop comes in. He has a safe that he found under the bathroom sink in the master bathroom. It is a briefcase type safe that's locked, but it has part of a baggie hanging out of it. Oh my god. So his master plan, by the way, one of his big contentions is that the officer who does open it, and he opens it on camera, officer erred in opening that safe. He had no reason to open that safe. The safe was not a part of the search warrant, so he shouldn't have opened it. But there's a fucking baggie hanging outside the safe. So even if the search warrant was, you have a search warrant for the entire house, which is what it said, but no safes, if it explicitly said that, he would still have probable cause to open the safe. They were able to test the part that had been sticking out, and it tested positive for cocaine. Just test the safe for cocaine. Rekieta really thought that he was going to get everything in the safe thrown out of evidence, as if it didn't test positive for cocaine. Incredible. The officer leaves to go back, and they ask for the key. He gets a quick phone call and asks Kayla for the key. She is with 2 family service workers. He tells her, "We need the key or we're going to have to break it open." She says she doesn't know where it is. Well, chat, it's time for Officer Pomplin to smash. They go outside. The kids are still sitting on the ground. The cop walks behind the vehicles and breaks open the safe with what looks like a pry bar and a mallet. So Officer Pomplin says, "Give me the key." She said, "I ain't getting no key." He's like, "Okay, I smash." And he did indeed, in fact, smash box. The safe is full of drugs, paraphernalia, and baggies. They take a photo and say, "Let's get it to a better location." On their way back to the house, another officer mentions that the grandparents are on their way. They take the safe to a small bathroom, place it on the toilet, and open it. There's a baggie that says KKK on the outside. They surmise that it is ketamine. It's actually condensed racism. There's another a digital scale, snort tubes, and a metal piece that looks like a crack pipe, and another metal item that looks like a spoon without the handle. Another cop, he asks for another cop and says, "This is insane." His glove rips and he needs a new one. He says that he thinks one is ketamine, and the bites are either Molly or LSD. They start documenting the evidence. There's a baggie that's sticking out of the safe, which tests positive for cocaine. There are also some cards and rolled up dollar bill. They find a large corner cut out with white powder. There are Ziploc bags containing smaller bags. One of them has KKK written on it. Another Ziploc contains multiple small bags with powder. They find a digital scale, a metal pen and container, 2 snort tubes, and 2 cutters. Officer Pomplin goes back into the studio. A cop tells him they didn't search the stuff that's covered in dust since it obviously hasn't been touched recently. So to give you an idea, there is so much shit in this house that even though they have a full search warrant for the home, the cops are sitting there thinking, we have to make some decisions about what we're not going to search, because if we actually took out all this shit and itemize all this shit in the most studious detail possible, we would literally never ever get through this home. So they're saying, okay, all the mounds of shit, all the gigantic piles of garbage that are everywhere, if it's covered in dust, don't bother with it, because it's probably not going to be recent anyways. They're probably not going to leave their drugs under the untouched piles of junk, because they need that for doing drugs. So they make some tough calls about what to search for expediency's sake. Let's see. He's searching through the artwork that's against the wall, including the cat painting. You can see a close-up of a lot of the stuff that's usually behind Nick when he's streaming. They find a container or box of something and says it looks like cornstarch inside. This motherfucker is eating cornstarch. This guy is he's become a person of cornstarch. That's really quite incredible. He starts going through Nick's collectibles, opening boxes and looking inside. He says there aren't other safes. A family service worker asks about collecting electronics for the kids and says they're going to grandma's. Officer Pomplin goes into a room where there are lots of clothing racks with clean clothes hanging up. Kayla is in there with family services, gathering clothes for the kids. The officer asks about getting electronics for them. Officer Pomplin goes into the garage. He finds out there's another safe and gets the equipment to break it open. They open it. Inside, there are guns and ammo. He takes pictures of all the guns and the rest of the contents. One of the cops starts looking around at all the boxes and totes of stuff. He asks how long they've been living there. Officer Pomplin says, a while. The other cop looks like they have a half unpacked boxes from moving or something. Oh, okay. So the cop is asking why, how long have they been there? And Officer Pomplin is like, well, they've been here for ages, for years. And then the cop mentions that there are like boxes that have never been unpacked. So even in the garage, there is like shit that is just stacked in boxes that they've never touched. Now Pomplin says it might be April stuff. She says she's only been there for a month. So she did. She like properly, if that is her stuff, she like properly moved in. She had half open boxes of moving stuff inside the room. So that's really crazy. Okay, so someone walks through with the dog on a leash. An officer comes in and says there's another safe in the master bedroom closet. Officer Pomplin asks him to bring it out into the garage. They bring it out and break it open. Inside there are Ziploc baggies, a rolled $100 bill with white powder, rolling papers, lots of THC cartridges, a scooper, and a small funnel. They're not sure what some of it is, but they suspect fentanyl. They take pictures of it all. They leave the THC cartridges and don't put them into evidence. They say they'll test everything else in the station. Officer Pomplin starts documenting all the evidence in his report: drugs, paraphernalia, guns, and ammo. He lists them all out, including serial numbers on the guns. They discuss needing to do a basic sweep of the kids' rooms and other bathrooms. Kayla's mom arrives to pick up the kids and dog. Kayla walks in shortly after, looking strung out. She's wearing a backless shirt, and you can see all of her back tattoos. They come across a box with April's name on it. They open it to inspect the contents. Oh, they were right. So that was her like moving stuff, where she was unpacking into the household over time. They start going through the kitchen cabinets, focusing especially on the ones with pills and medicines. They think that they found needles and realize there are syringes without needles, the kind used for administering liquid medications. Officer Pomplin goes back into the master bathroom, walk-in closet, and another officer who debriefs him on where they found the previous evidence, like the bullet in the other safe. The other cop is in the back of the closet, looking at a shelf, saying there are all kinds of THC vapes and adult stuff. You can't see it from Pomplin's point of view, but it's clear these items are out in the open, easily visible, and accessible to anyone who walks in, including the kids. Collection is right there out in the open for everybody walking past the room in the middle of the house, right next to the kitchen and living room for anyone to see. They announce that everyone else is gone, and they start collecting all their stuff. One of them brings to the incident where Nick threw the warrant on the ground. So that's the cop that handed him the warrant, and he went and dropped it on the ground like a baby. They all leave. So this is her addendum. She says, the house has a very weird layout. The location of the master bedroom is especially concerning. It is very close to the main communal areas, making it easy for kids to overhear things they shouldn't, like sex noises, arguments, and other adult conversations or activities. The messiest and most hoarded areas of the house are the ones the adults spend most of their time in. The streaming setup is highly curated. What viewers see on camera is a complete illusion. Behind the scenes, it is a filthy, cramped, and chaotic lair. I think she's what she meant to say there. Not all the drugs and paraphernalia were hidden. Some were left out in the open in areas kids could easily access if they are the inquisitive type, including the master bathroom, bedroom, and closet. It is a heavy and honestly heartbreaking to witness the conditions the kids and animals have been living in. The filth, the chaos, the presence of drugs and weapons create an environment no child or pet should be subjected to. The dog lives confined to the bathroom. At least one cat was seen on home. That is fucking bizarre. So apparently, I don't know if this is like all the time or if it was just there for a while, but apparently the dog lives in the bathroom. And the children, they were not just caught in the middle of a search warrant. They have been living in this every day. You can feel the weight of that reality in almost every frame of the footage. Even basic things like clothing and mail were randomly scattered. Important documents were mixed in with fan art, trash, and drug gear. Nothing was organized, and there was no sense of separation between adult items and areas where the kids lived and played. Finding Nick's mom's prescription bottle alongside the cocaine and paraphernalia raises bigger questions about his parents' role in all of this. Are they enabling it, turning it a blind eye, or actively involved? At the very least, it points to a serious lack of boundaries. At worst, it suggests a generational pattern of dysfunction that these kids are now sadly caught up in. It's also worth noting that the behavior of the officers throughout the search were patient, respectful, and professional from start to finish. Despite the overwhelming filth, drug presence, and emotional weight of the scene, they kept their personal commentary to a minimum. They did not mock or escalate. In fact, given everything they encountered, it's notable how restrained they were. While the search could have been even more thorough, it would have taken significantly longer, and they seemed focused on securing the most critical evidence while minimizing disruption to the children who were present. And that is body cam document 1. This will be the most complete body cam document that comes out until our lawsuit is over, and then we'll just have the footage, hopefully.